Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating guest. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Thank you, Gertrude, and I'm very pleased to be on your show and pleased to have met you on LinkedIn. I'm Jim or James Kamanski, and you can find me on LinkedIn under my personal branding, James Kamanski. And I am a part-time creator, and I talk a lot about personal growth and some of the smaller topics underneath that. And I'm an attorney in Southern California. I've been an attorney. Let me take my glasses off so you can see me a little better. I've been an attorney for 30 years. I do litigation, and my primary focus is on bodily injury litigation. So people sometimes get a little confused over why is this attorney talking about personal development and personal growth and self-help and that kind of thing. And the connection is that in my law practice, I have to deal with medical concepts all the time. I take depositions of doctors, of psychologists, of neuropsychologists that do very kind of hardcore testing, mental testing of patients and that kind of thing. And that skill set, I've been able to transfer it into understanding the concepts behind personal growth. Also working as a lawyer in big firms and also being an entrepreneur, which I'm going to describe that to you in a little bit in a moment, on two fronts, basically being owning my own practice. You know, lawyers have their own practice, and that's an entrepreneurial venture right there. So working in a firm, you have leadership aspirations and issues and teamwork ideas, teams you have to work with, and then being your own boss and running your own firm, you're an entrepreneur. I started a telemedicine website in 2017. We wrapped that up in 2023, but it was a success to me. I had a co-founder who was a psychologist, and she was great. And we treated folks that had excess drinking issues with medication-assisted treatment. And to buttress that included hiring a bunch of doctors to assess and then prescribe medication, primarily a medication called naltrexone, which is little known, but anybody out there that has a drinking issue should look into it. Using a method called the Sinclair method, which was invented in Finland by their Ministry of Health. And it's just a time dosing of the medication, timing it with your alcohol consumption to correspond with tamping down the reinforcement and reward you get from drinking. And that retrains the brain and the body to then not want so much alcohol. It works very, very well. And not a lot of people have heard about it, but if you tap into it or research or Google the Sinclair method, you'll find out more about it. But in addition to having the doctors prescribing that medication and guiding patients through that process through multiple sessions of video chats, I produced a self-development course, multi-module course to go with that. So it included how to follow the procedure as backup for what the doctors were telling our patients, but then also introducing clients to, and sometimes I call them clients, the patients or the clients, to new ideas and concepts on personal development and growth and how to regain agency over your life, how to find different tools, mindsets to adopt to allow you to find what I would call launch pads to go to a higher level and really start to reach a fulfilling lifestyle and change your lifestyle around entirely, so that now you're no longer someone who is dependent on alcohol or turning to alcohol or using it as a coping mechanism, to someone who's broken free from those chains and then has gone beyond that. It isn't just, well, I'm no longer drinking, but I'm still really not doing much of anything else. But learning to now cope with stress and find fulfillment and really go to a wellness state. And that was sort of our unique, selling point. Was we're not just restoring you back to basic health by getting you to quit drinking alcohol, which is sort of like cutting back on a bad diet. If you're eating junk food all the time, well, we got you to cut back. That's great. That's going to help you. But what about now getting out and doing some exercise and getting better relationships and learning about boundaries and learning how to be assertive and learning about locus of control, which was a big concept in our program, and how to reframe things so that you can then grow. So that's a connection, and that was maybe a little bit long-winded, but that's how I got into personal growth. The telemedicine website was a success, but we did wrap it up. Like all startups can face hurdles and setbacks, and we made an informed decision to wrap things up. We felt like we did a lot of good. We helped over 400 patients, a lot of them during the pandemic, and we saw some phenomenal turnarounds. And so with the materials that I produced, I basically am on a venture to repurpose those and grow a personal brand around personal growth and self-development from the lawyer's perspective. So I'm pulling in not only what I learned from the telehealth side, but also my experience as an attorney, my need to work in a high pressure environment with a lot of deadlines, deal with high level concepts with experts, run teams, project manage, and bring that to the table as well, and bring my own unique package of personal growth to my audience. And so that's where I'm at now. And if you are a LinkedIn person, you'll find me over there, and that's sort of the environment that I've created over there. But then, during my day job is sort of here, tapping away at the computer and still wrestling with legal cases. So I got a lot going on.
Thank you so much, Jim. What a fascinating career you've shaped for yourself, and in a very interesting niche that we don't normally get to hear about. Alcohol abuse is an issue that affects people, right across the board. But how did your background in law, particularly in cases related to medicine and psychology, influence your approach to telehealth and personal growth?
The whole thing started when I met a woman that I started to date that showed up very, very lovely, very intelligent woman, also herself studying to be a psychologist, that had a drinking problem. And because of my background in medicine and psychology and having to audit expert opinions, that's what we do. Basically, what I explain to people is I go up and I get the expert's opinion at a very high level, and I break it down and then explain it to juries or explain it to myself or to anybody else in more simplistic fashion. And I told her and her family, I said, there's some new treatment methods. Let's try this. At the same time, we hit an intersection in my life. In Southern California, in Los Angeles, we have a community called the Silicon Beach community. So it's not Silicon Valley, it's Silicon Beach, and that's LA's startup community. And I was living right in the middle of it in Los Angeles and going to a lot of their events, and that influenced me heavily. And I saw, well, geez, there's a lot you can do online, and telemedicine delivering services through an online portal versus in person now is becoming very popular. So I just came up with the idea to put this method onto a telehealth platform.
How did you address the specific needs of women in particular in your telehealth program? And especially when it comes to building confidence and clarity, women are affected a little bit more with alcohol abuse. What are the factors that compound that?
It's goes back, and that's very true. Women do face extra hurdles in coping with a lot of things, and it's more of a societal issue when we're talking about women's particular challenges when it comes to alcohol or anything else, because of a lot of these setbacks and barriers that have been traditionally in place for women. It forces more of a need for coping and increases stress levels. And so you're going to see a high correlation between stress and alcohol use. And alcohol use is a form of coping. It's not a very adaptive form of coping, but it is a form of coping.
Yeah.
So that's the unique challenge that women have to face, is they're a little bit more susceptible to any kind of drug addiction or maladaptive coping because of their societal constraints they faced. Now, in terms of the ways we've helped them, we've treated them, it's the same for anybody, all genders, all types, all identifications, however a person chooses to identify with themselves. We start from that point of view, but then we tailor it toward those specific issues that do face women. And we're going to see a lot of that, for example, in the corporate world, where women face, a more difficult time getting into leadership positions, or in situations where they may not receive equal pay, things like that.
Okay. So how did you ensure that your telehealth program was a safe and supportive space for women facing health and personal development challenges?
Well, I had a co-founder who was a woman and very much into these issues, and she highlighted those. She also went out and worked with the influencers in this particular space, the Sinclair Method space, that is spearheaded by an actress, Claudia Christian, who's got a nonprofit that talks all about the Sinclair Method. Got her on board. We had one female doctor she was an ER doctor, but as a female, she was attuned to female issues, specific issues. And then we also had a nurse practitioner that was able to prescribe that was also female. So we basically tried to populate our group of healthcare providers with equal, if not more, women. And we didn't have to have a ton of them, but it was very important for us to have a very balanced team.
So can you share some common obstacles that women encounter when trying to make these lifestyle changes, and how your program addressed them?
Well, when they're trying to make a lifestyle change, some of the particular challenges they're going to face are going to be adherence to the medication. And that's actually, so there's rules around the Sinclair Method which say that you take the naltrexone 1 hour before you have what we call a drinking session. So that required you to sit down and map out when you would normally drink alcohol and learn that, and then take the medication 1 hour before a planned drinking session. So it's sort of ritualistic. That actually helped women a lot, because women tend to gravitate more toward some of the rules. But the challenges that a lot of them would face, they would face challenges ranging from being more open about this treatment with, say, an employer, or with family, or with spouse, or getting the kind of support they needed. And so that's why I put together these videos. It was a video course, a multimodal course, so that someone had something in their back pocket. Just to kind of go off on a tangent, my co-founder was also very interested in some of the at-home abortion telemedicine sites that were popping up. And she invited me into that group. She had reached out to those folks too. And those people did some very hardcore research that informed us that women like privacy when it comes to their health. Yes. They really do. And more so, I think, than men. And it's partly because they have a hard time explaining some of these things, because society tells them they have to be perfect rather than human. And so giving them something that they could just look at privately, which was my modules, I think helped a lot. That was kind of our way of dealing with it, in addition to having some healthcare providers that were female.
Okay. Now, are there any specific habits or practices that you recommend to help women gain confidence and gain control of their personal and professional lives?
Yeah, I would strongly recommend that women pay attention to, and all people really focus on mindset, right? So mindset talks about adopting, it's almost like a mantra in your head that you would repeat, but we don't say mantra so much because they sound a little hokey. What the self-help community starts to call woo-woo. It's like
Yeah.
you can just start talking about stuff and it sounds great, but does it really work? Is it practical?
Yeah.
And I would say embracing the idea of a mindset is the first thing you want to do. And a mindset is almost like putting a statement, a very short statement that you can say to yourself on loop quietly in your head to the point where it now becomes a part of your thinking. It's like re-architecting your style of thinking. And mindset was championed. That word's been around for a long time, but Carol Dweck out of Stanford, she's a psychologist. I think she's still there. Her heyday is kind of over, but she came up with the famous, very famous, you see all over the place, dichotomy between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. And she did the studies. Psychology struggles to be like the hard sciences, like chemistry and engineering, where you can measure things down to the millimeter and so forth. Psychology tries to take science and put it on something that's a little mushy to begin with.
Yes.
She did it very successfully and showed that in particular children that adopt a growth mindset succeed well beyond those that have a fixed mindset or a limiting mindset. And so she just took that phrase and broke it into two prongs, fixed and growth, and did the studies. They did studies, for example, where they had children adopt a growth mindset, and then they had them take standardized tests for intelligence that they give kids in school, and they skyrocketed. Math tests skyrocketed. And then they do longitudinal studies and they find out that they do better there. So I would say that's the first basic one for any woman, is to adopt a growth mindset. First of all, identify what a mindset is, get a good understanding of that concept, and think of it like a little computer program you install in your head. And the first one is say, I'm going to have a growth mindset. So that would be mindset would be the first one. In addition to that, you can take mindset and you can expand it to some other areas. So I think another one that's very helpful for women is to not feel that they're being judged so much by other people. And if they are, who cares? It sounds a little reckless, but a lot of women are very sensitive to what others think about them.
Yeah, it's true.
And it hamstrings everyone who thinks that way. So if you have kind of like, I don't care what that person thinks attitude, just shed it. Like it's just something in your backpack you don't need, right? It's you've gone on a hike, you brought something along, and you absolutely just toss it. You don't need it. Don't worry what other people think. Don't worry about being judged. And the moment that mindset is installed, you are now very free to be yourself and to talk. And you'll realize people will actually start to respect you because you're entitled to be expressive. You're entitled to be yourself. Those would be the two. And then I can give you a third one, which I think is really important, is knowing how to draw boundaries. So a lot of women have difficulty saying no, right? And I talk about this all the time. If you go to my LinkedIn posts, I always say no is a full and complete sentence. If I write it out, just the word no, period, full and complete sentence. It's at the heart of all boundary drawing with people.
Yes.
And what people forget, a people pleaser, if all you do is please people and say yes to people's requests, then you lose your identity. You now become a servant for someone else. And I think a lot of women have a servant mentality, and I see this on LinkedIn. Oh, you should have a servant mentality and give and give and give. It's like, I disagree with that. You should be looking out for yourself first. Put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you put it on child, because if you do it in reverse, you both are going to perish. That's the old analogy to a plane going down. But I would say knowing how to draw boundaries, and the core piece of that is how to insert the word no firmly into a sentence. It could be no, I can't, because you can give an excuse. Yes. But I find just saying no, I'm not able to. Simple and easy. But drawing boundaries is so critically important, because then you start to protect your own time, your own integrity, and you can start to then shape who you're going to hang out with, what you're going to do, and start to do things that are important for you. And one last piece I'll add to that with boundaries is that a lot of people think, if I draw a boundary, I'm going to lose a friend, or I'm going to draw some kind of ire from the other person. And in fact, that's true. Most people, 99.9% of the people out there, are going to be glad that you have drawn a bright line boundary, because they don't know where to go. They need guidance from you on what the pathway is to you and where it stops. And when you give them that, you're giving them a gift. So the boundary is a gift. It's not for your benefit. It's for their benefit too. It's for your benefit, but it's ultimately for their benefit. And 99.9% of the people I know are going to they're going to abide by your boundary. Yeah. They're going to be happy it's there. They know their place. They're going to abide by it. And if you run into that, less than 1% of the people out there that don't, and try and manipulate you or make you feel guilty for drawing that boundary, you've got a beautiful litmus test right there to get rid of that person.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be in your life.
So can you share a story of a woman who transformed her life through your program, and what insights she gained?
Well, we had several testimonials that came in. With telemedicine, I can't go into too many details as, the person's background, obviously, all that kind of stuff, because all these health issues, in particular, anything around addiction medicine is very private. But we had several testimonies that would come in, to my surprise too, because this was my first internet venture. And all of a sudden you get an email, saying, my God, this has been transforming for me. But for some of the women, just one in particular from a testimonial I recall, was that she didn't think that she could turn her life around. She was desperate. So I hate to have to find people in a state of where they're desperate. I'd rather find someone who realizes, okay, I need some help, and has reached out before it's too late. It's really never too late, but doesn't let the problem turn into a forest fire, as I like to say. It's sort of a fire that's a little out of control. Don't let it get into a forest fire. But she was a little bit desperate, but she found us, and she wrote right in the testimonial. She's like, it looked like it was too good to be true. This looked like maybe, wasn't believable, but I gave it a shot, and I'm living proof it really works. And I'm very excited for what my life holds ahead of me now. Now, that last piece I know came from the self-development coursework, because it showed her ultimately, and maybe some of the core pieces of all this is that she has agency. She has control over her life. Yes. No one can take that away from her. Even a choice not to choose is a choice. Yes, and so exercising that choice and using these mindsets, boundaries, I don't care what other people think, and growth mindset, those would be the three top ones that come to my mind right now. And there's many more, and there's a lot more I go into in a lot of my teachings, and philosophies. Yeah, those three core ones, those were the ones that helped her out of it. And you could tell, she was it was a complete 180 turnaround.
What role do gratitude and reflection play in personal growth, and how do you suggest women incorporate them into their routines?
Well, reflection, sometimes called mindfulness too, is just it really boils down to going back to being present, right? So a lot of times we're always thinking about what can I have, or what should I have, or what might happen in the future. So we're thinking in the future, or we're thinking in the past, and that's regret. And those aren't places that are fun to be. You want to be, as much as you can, you want to be in the present moment. Now, that doesn't mean in the exact second, although you can kind of if you want to conceptualize it, is bring yourself right here, right now. Being present is kind of where it starts. And having gratitude ties into being present, because when you have gratitude, you start to lower your expectations. You start to lower what you want out of the future and be happy with what you have. And if you strip away, this is a thought experiment I often encourage people to do, just a radical thought experiment, is to drop all your expectations for a moment. Just think for a minute, just drop every expectation you ever have. Yes. And right now, and your anxieties will go away. And so that's a gratitude exercise. By having gratitude for what you have, rather than stressing about what you don't have, you're going to take a ton of weight off yourself. Right? Yes. And the only way to get there is to reflect, is to sit down and reflect. Well, what do I have? How far have I come? Maybe turn around and look. And I have some, all the creators, like we kind of focus on our art, and I kind of shift between different stuff, but I do these graphics of a stick figure man drawn in a white chalk figure. And I have one image where he's walking through the snow and he's got a bunch of footsteps behind him. He just turns around, and to gauge how much progress you've made, sometimes you just have to turn around and look and see how far you've come, rather than say, "Oh my God, I got all these mountains I have to climb." Well, look how far you've come. So that would be my take on gratitude. Is tied in with presence, and then also, and you can't get anywhere without reflection.
I love that. Yeah, I read a book once that said depression is mostly focused on us looking back on things that happened that you can't go back and change. And your stresses are focused on things in the future that may or may not happen. Mm-hmm. So that being present is a really good piece of advice. Now, for women leaders striving for personal development, what advice would you give on handling self-doubt and imposter syndrome?
On self-doubt and imposter syndrome, for a woman who wants to be a leader, again, it goes back to not worrying about what others are too concerned about in terms of judging you. It's best to just be yourself and just step right out into the arena and do your own thing. So long as you're equipped with a couple of basic tools as to what is it you're trying to achieve, what are the best practices, let's say, and I'm talking a little bit in an amorphous sense here, but let's say you are striving to become a manager in a company or a project manager. Yes. Well, there's going to be best practices. You want to know what the company expects of you. You want to know how they expect you to get there. And then there's going to be material within the industry that are best practices. So as long as you have those and you're executing those just to the best of your ability, that's all you can expect of yourself. Mm-hmm. So it's more of a comparison against your own progress versus trying to compare yourself with others, and making sure that you've equipped yourself with the tools that are available to do the best you can do to be your best self. So that would be my best advice. And imposter syndrome, I wouldn't, as a woman, I just wouldn't worry about it. I just would have the bravado to be yourself and not worry about failure, not worry about feeling like you're not good enough to do it. They say that most of the course creators, there's always these, like, I look at the people in my industry and I'm like, my God, these people are making so much money and they've really done this. It's what do I know that I can share with someone behind me? That's really it. We're all kind of in a big long chain, and kind of what can I amass, and how can I deliver a result or a positive benefit to someone who's behind me? I just have to be a couple of steps ahead of them. I don't have to be a PhD in personal growth. I don't even think they offer something like that, but I've got sort of that. I got a JD and I've taken probably over 1,000 hours of deposition testimony, sworn testimony from doctors. So I got some pretty good experience, but not all that's tied into personal growth. It just makes me understand some of these concepts and then morph them into the personal growth arena.
So how has being recognized as a Thomson Reuters super lawyer impacted your career and influenced your work outside traditional law?
it puts me in the top 5% of lawyers in Southern California. It's a ranking system that Thomson Reuters, it's a big legal publisher, and they're tied with Reuters, which is a huge news
Yeah,
publisher.
it's big.
It's their ranking system, and they have a special proprietary way of doing it. I've been getting it every year for the last 10 years, 11 years now, no, maybe 12, because I think they already announced it for next year. And so I'm going to have it for 2025. It's sort of a signal of competence. So I use it as a way to not only showcase I'm a good lawyer, but also to showcase that whatever I do, I'm going to do a good job as. So being a Thomson Reuters ranked super lawyer, being in the top 5% of lawyers in Southern California in litigation, and having this year after year after year for the last decade plus is really just a branding tool for me and a way for me to signal to others that I'm committed to what I start out to do.
It's fantastic. Now, I like to end my podcast interviews with 2 time experiment questions.
Okay.
Number 1, I'm going to teleport you into the past.
All right.
We are going to talk to that younger man who had a partner who was struggling with alcohol abuse, didn't know what to do, didn't know how to start, didn't know how to support and help her. Just in case there's somebody who's listening to us right now, what 3 nuggets of wisdom can you impart? What would you have wanted somebody to have said to you to support you at that time?
I got pushback from a lot of people about getting involved with anybody that had alcohol abuse, in a romantic setting or even being friends with somebody like that. And I wish that I'd had more support. I had a minority group of friends and family that were telling me, go for it. If this is what you want to do, it's your choice to be involved with this person. Just go in with your eyes open and know what you're doing. But if you really care for this person, then go for it. Versus the other group of people saying, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And I wish I had more of the more sensitive people that were, encouraging me to exercise my own choice and agency. That would be one. Another one would be, I just wish there wasn't so much stigma around it. We faced issues with her family wanting other ways to treat this condition. And so there was a battle there. A lot of people, and this didn't come up earlier, but there's a schism in the addiction medicine community over using medication versus what we call self-restraint models. So self-restraint would be like Alcoholics Anonymous, where they tell you just to stop. But the nature of addiction, actually, that makes it the cravings and desire for the alcohol or substance actually goes up over time if you graph it out. And it doesn't work, and then you spike and you have a very serious relapse. I wish there wasn't so much stigma around it. I wish there wasn't so much pushback from the family to use different models. Even myself, sometimes I think to myself, I should have been a little bit more committed, because I would sometimes get influenced by these outside sources to just walk away or to give up on it and that kind of thing. We had some clients that, I remember one, it was a father and a son, and the son had very severe alcohol use disorder. That's what we call it in the medical science. And he went through this process, the medication process, and part of the process requires you to take the medication when you drink so you can retrain the brain and the body to no longer want alcohol. But if you're at the severe end, the first part of the therapy can be hard because you have to drink, and if you're an alcoholic, you drink and you get real sick. But I saw the dad stay 100% committed, and I think they rented a hotel room for a couple weeks to go through the process. And the dad stuck by his son's side. And I wasn't quite at that level. I wasn't able to offer my partner that level, and I wish I had, in hindsight. So maybe a little bit of a regret, but live and learn.
Yeah, alcohol addiction is something that most people don't understand, and you're right. The stigma around it is what makes people not disclose the challenges they're having. And it's just more common than it's uncommon. There's a lot of functional alcoholics out there. And yeah, thank you for framing it in that way. It really brings that sensitivity to this issue, which is sometimes missing. Okay. Now, if I take you into the future as the last question, I know you are a recent dad, and we are going to go and sit with you at the age of 90. And you're sitting in your rocking chair surrounded by your children, your grandchildren, whoever's with you at the end. If you could go into the future and have a conversation with the 90-year-old you, based on how you're living your life right now, the work that you're doing in this area, what will you say to him when you finally meet this wise old 90-year-old?
Well, I would talk to my 90-year-old self, probably asking him if I had accomplished everything he wanted. I think the important things to think about when we put ourselves into the future are negating regrets. I think we want to make sure that we've accomplished everything that we've set out to accomplish, and understand that we don't get to live forever, not until they invent, and they might invent something like that. They might invent a way to create an avatar. I think they're working on it now, where you can upload your avatar through AI or something. But realistically, I think the most important thing is to identify what goals you want to accomplish and understand that there is a timeline. This is something I used to talk about in our modules on the telehealth site, is that, and for lawyers, we look at life expectancy charts. These are developed by statisticians. They're very accurate. They're used by insurance companies, life insurance companies, and they're in the jury instructions for cases. And when I look at those in a very cold way, analytical way, I realize we all have to go at some point in time. So you want to make the most out of life. And, time accelerates as you get a little bit older. There's a feeling of that. So if I were to go up into my 90s, and I've got my son now, I'm so grateful to have him. He's such a joy. I have my little ways of putting him to sleep and stuff that only I can do, that my wife can't do. I rock him on my chest, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for my wife, and I'm finally getting married a little bit later in life. And she's younger than me, so I'm kind of happy about that, because I'll have someone that can raise him. And then I think also what's important is that, in addition to accomplishing everything you set out to accomplish, and it shouldn't just be work related. I've got all these travel destinations I want to go to, and I'm very into finding work-life balance or integration, but breaking up more time for myself. I think that people that are working, actually the kind of job I work right now, is difficult. But I would say finding more time for yourself, accomplishing those goals, and I think it's neat to capture all this new technology we have, recordings of my philosophies that I can send down to my son, and we hope to have another child, that aren't just what I looked at when I've tried to look back on my family. It's like little pieces of paper or hints as to what their daily lives were like, or what an archaeologist is trying to figure out how. I want it to be in broad, beautiful, recorded daylight with me talking, and maybe have my son do that for his kids, and then they do that for their kids. So we have this beautiful historical account of our lives and philosophies, so that we integrate as generations to go along. This is going to be my little thing. And I want to have something for my kids to turn to say, there's dad, and this is what he used to think. And what would I do? What would dad do in this situation? And be someone who can help guide my children that way. And if it's not just them remembering something I told them, they're like, let's watch the video. I think it'd be pretty fun.
I love it.
Or something like that in the coming.
Thank you so much. And thank you for coming online and sharing your story with us. I really love asking people that last question, because a lot of times we don't realize that wise old woman or that wise old man is already in us.
Yep.
He's the one that prompted you to do the things you're doing. Now you're empowering so many more people with your programs, with your videos. So kudos to you for listening to your promptings and listening to him. Thank you.
Well, I really appreciate you having me as a guest on your show, Gertrude, and jumping on our communications on LinkedIn. So I'm pleased to be here, and it was really nice your questioning. And I'm here as a resource if you ever need anything as well. Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jim. And if anybody is needing help, if you have a friend, a relative who's in need, you can find Jim online. On LinkedIn is how we met. And, technology is amazing now. The world is flat because of the internet. We are connecting with people from all over the world. You just have to make that little bit of effort to find them. And through this podcast, I am bringing you the voices of some absolutely amazing human beings. And that's the full spelling of Jim's name. So thank you for tuning in, everybody. I'll be back again tomorrow with yet another amazing guest. Have a fantastic day wherever you are in the world, and bye for now. Thanks again, Jim.
You're welcome. Bye-bye, Gertrude. Bye.
Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates, and join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story.